Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the April 29th regular meeting of Council. And I'd firstly like to recognize we're on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Goury. The question period sign-up sheet is on the partition wall near the gallery. And if during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, would you please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. At the start of question period, I'll recognize and call up those who've signed to the podium to address Council. The first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items, Ms. Goury, and we have a few.
Yes, thank you, Worship. So for late items this evening, removal of agenda item 9, consent item B24, funding request from Mid-Island Business Initiative, in order for it to be voted on separately. And for that same item, adding delegation from Jolyn Green, Community Future Central Island, Kim Smythe, Greater Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce, and Graham, and forgive me if I get this wrong, Tro, Innovation Island Technology Association. For agenda item 10H, development variance permit application number DVP 330 for 2067 and 2073 Boxwood Road, we're adding delegation from Raymond DeBeeld and Dave Pollock from P&R Truck Center Ltd. And for agenda item 14A, Councillor Brown motion, reclimate emergency, adding a delegation and petition from Francis Deverell. That's it, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. A motion for the approval of the agenda then. So moved. Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favour? Motion carried. Thank you very much. A motion for the adoption of the minutes is circulated and is set out. Moved Councillor Bonner, seconded Councillor Hemmons. All those in favour? Motion carried. Thank you very much. With respect to the Mayor's report, some of you may have noticed that in recognition, obviously, of an important day, which was yesterday, the flags at the City of Nanaimo have been lowered. The Canadian, the Workers' Day of Mourning flag, and the City of Nanaimo flags to half-mast, and they, as of Friday, April the 26th, and they'll remain as such until the morning of Monday, May the 6th, for two purposes. The firstly is in recognition of the National Day of Mourning that is observed in Canada on April 28th. It commemorates workers who have been killed on the job, injured or suffered illnesses due to their work-related hazards and occupational exposures. And the purpose of it is to remind all of us to remember and honour the lives of those who were lost and those who have been injured, and to renew our commitment to improving health and safety in the workplace. For those of you who had an opportunity to attend yesterday the ceremony at Pioneer Plaza, 139 workers died on the job last year in British Columbia. A total of 187 died, including those who were killed on the job and those who died of work-related injuries or illnesses. And so it evidences for all of us that safety in the workplace is important. It's why I and our CEO, Mr. Rudolph, this morning went out to the Labio work site and addressed workers there. And it's also in recognition of the significant and sad history of this community around mine safety. It was on May the 3rd, 1887, the #1 mine disaster. It took the lives, imagine this, of 150 people. And you can only imagine the devastation that it meant for those families living in those times who didn't enjoy the benefit of WorkSafe or workers' compensation or such things. And so this city continues to honour quite appropriately by lowering the flags, as I've indicated. I want to thank all of you for attending tonight. It's always a pleasure for Council to see so many citizens out in support of or in opposition to whatever items may be on the agenda. Without any further ado, we have no presentations per se, Ms. Goury. In terms of delegations, we're going to hear them in the order in which they are in the rest of the agenda. I would ask for a motion for adoption of the consent items that is agreeable to everyone.
So moved.
So moved, Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Hemmons. Any discussion? All those in favour? Motion carried. Thank you very much. To be separately addressed is the funding request from Mid-Island Business Initiative, and we have a delegation with respect to that. Mr. Green, Ms. Green, pardon me, Mr. Smythe and Mr. Trucks. Do you wish to come forward? Trucks, sorry. Truax, my apologies. I'm sensitive about Krog, so feel free to correct me. And I believe we have 5 minutes. Please.
Good evening, Your Worship and City Councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to present to Council on behalf of Graham Truax, Innovation Island, myself, Jolyn Green, Community Futures, and Kim Smythe, Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce. Accelerate Nanaimo is a local collaboration starting with 3 long-standing community leaders. We have deep domain expertise with established relationships, infrastructure, and leveraged capital. We have industry-wide connections in business, technology, and finance. Accelerate Nanaimo is in alignment with the city's strategic plan for economic health. Accelerate Nanaimo, what will we do? We will offer 3 shovel-ready programs that deliver on the following objectives: support business startups and its culture, foster the retention and expansion of local enterprise, engage the economic pulse of the downtown core, and galvanize a strategy for resilience. We will develop and grow the tech sector and increase access to capital. Each program has proven outcomes and deliverables. LEAP, powered by Community Futures Central Island, is a local accelerator program that supports Nanaimo entrepreneurs to test their business hypothesis and successfully launch their business idea. It promotes a startup culture in our community. We have just completed a very successful LEAP Oceanside pilot project with proven results. 80% of the entrepreneurs that participated pitched to the local community, and 65% will be launching their businesses. Rev Up is powered by Innovation Island. It will focus on growth stage companies that have established product market fit and revenue models, are committed to expansion with their headquarters to be located in Nanaimo, and has senior management in place. The program structure that will support this is a team of executives in residence. They also will have custom-built action plans and workshops, curated peer-to-peer roundtables and events. This program has been developed and perfected by Accelerate Okanagan. The Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce supports entrepreneurs by working with Futurepreneur Canada, Small Business BC, and others. They fund the Young Entrepreneurs Desk for tech startups at Input Cowork. They offer monthly Pro-D workshops and also publish the annual Nanaimo Business Relocation Guide for the business in migration. They are committed to downtown revitalization. The Chamber assumes the financial risk and management responsibility to build local pride, sustain downtown business activity, and promote arts and culture in the now annual night market that will start again this June 20th. They also encourage social enterprise. The Social Venture Bootcamp, Connect Money Impact are new island events that position Nanaimo to be the island's center for social entrepreneurship. The Chamber is also bidding for Nanaimo to be the launch point for the Island Coastal Communities Social Procurement Initiative. As the voice of business, the Chamber advocates for the individual businesses and entire sectors with all levels of government towards the retention facet of economic development. They are currently partnering with the City on the Business Resource Forum project this May 30th and the Community Business Walks that will take place this fall. A partnering opportunity. We have a proven leadership team with 3 established and sustainably funded organizations with over 190 years of combined operational experience. We fill gaps and urgencies with proven just-in-time training and support services. We will have a focus on downtown core plus a strong regional influence and values. We interface with government and institutional partners. Our investment opportunity is capital efficiency. We propose a budget of $48,000 for a 12-month program with 100% focused on specific deliverables. We will have a minimum of 2 times the leverage funding for outsources and program expansion, measurable outcomes and community impact, administrative accountability, and leadership transparency. We are open for business. So to conclude, we humbly request an audience with the Finance and Audit Committee to further present and discuss our proposed Accelerate Nanaimo activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Under 5. Sorry, we're not, no questions, please, of council members, but no clapping or booing for that matter either. Thank you. Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to the delegation. So I'm just a little bit confused then. Are you asking for the same amount of dollars that MIBI is asking for, or are you asking for those instead of MIBI? For MTech, sorry.
Well, we recently discovered that there was a contingency fund that was arguably reserved for something of this nature, so we're asking for the same amount of money.
Councillor Bonner?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through your delegation. I'm not sure where this presentation has merit on what we're discussing here in this agenda. And I would invite you to make a presentation to Finance and Audit Committee on what you're saying. I don't think you're correct in that we have a contingency fund specifically for this type of thing. We have a contingency fund, but it's for anything the council decides. My question, because your presentation here tonight really has anything to do with what we're talking about tonight, can you, and we have seen a letter from you regarding this issue, do you speak on behalf of your organizations you are employed with, or are you speaking on behalf of yourself as individuals regarding the item that we're talking to tonight?
We felt it was timely to come forward with this because of the item that you are considering tonight. And yes, we are speaking on behalf of the organizations that we stand here representing, the names up on the screen.
Follow up on my, so we do have a letter from the Chamber of Commerce dated October 7th, 2018, and I'll paraphrase and just quote the last item. We encourage any and all funding bodies to seriously consider requests for funding and in-kind resources to support the momentum of this initiative moving forward, and it's referring specifically to MIBI and MTech. What has changed regarding the Chamber's position since that time and now?
The letter was written as a general support letter to MIBI in its pursuit of trying to get support for its efforts with MTech. Since then, this letter was not written to support their appeal to City Council for funding, and since then we've had further conversations and correspondence with Mayor and Council on this issue going forward.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the delegation? Thank you very much. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Would someone care to make the motion that's in our material?
You were asking for a motion?
Yes, the motion.
Read it then, okay.
This has been taken out of consent items in order to allow the delegation to be heard. The motion that was approved at the Finance and Audit Committee is the motion that I'm referring to. Ms. Gurry?
Yes, you're correct, Your Worship. So it's the motion that Council allocate $48,000 to the Mid-Island Business Initiative for the Manufacturing, Technology, and Entrepreneurship Council Program for the remainder of 2019.
Thank you. So moved. Seconded. Councillor Bonner. Discussion. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I've been back and forth on this. I will not be able to support this because I think that we are not following a proper due process. I believe it should go to an RFP to give other people the same opportunity to apply for these dollars as anybody else. It's about governance for me. I think if we do this, then it opens a door for all other same groups to come forward to advance their economic development. So for myself, I really appreciate the work MIBI's done in MTech, but I really believe we should do a process for this before we start allocating dollars. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Martman.
I myself am torn. I know that there is a sense of urgency to move on economic development. This funding was for one specific part of economic development, the tech industry. Economic development is a very broad topic and encompasses many different avenues. I'm distressed to know that in our first 6 months, we've already come across a topic that seems divisive within our community. and that really upsets me. I would really like to see the Chamber and MIBI and MTech and Innovation and the Chamber and everybody being able to work together as we move forward. I believe there is process and due diligence, and we're about to go into that very quickly with our strategic plan on economic development. But I also believe that MIBI has done a lot of good work and investment of both time and money and carried our city for a certain degree in the last council term with economic development. And therefore, with that in mind, I will support this motion. Thank you.
Oops, sorry, I hit too fast. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. Thank you. I won't be supporting the motion tonight. I've thoroughly reviewed the proposal and spoken at length with both the proponents as well as others in the business community. On our agenda this evening, we have a proposal of having an economic roundtable in which we're going to bring all of the partners to the table to have the discussion around the city's strengths and weaknesses and opportunities for economic development. I think funding something in advance of that conversation is preemptive, and as Councillor Armstrong points out, it just doesn't show good process. If after the economic roundtable, an initiative such as MTech is identified, I will be the first to vote in favor of it. But without that conversation, I just don't think I can.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, I tend to echo the thoughts of Councillor Hammond and Councillor Armstrong. I was unfortunately not at the Finance and Audit meeting when this recommendation was first discussed. I think it's very important that our city decide where we're going with our economic development, and we've certainly started those talks. I think due process is very important, and I'm just really not comfortable with an expenditure out of contingency of $45,000 for a short-term 6-month period. It might not be a lot of money to some people, but I really think it should be an RFP type of proposal, or use that money to look at the longer term and decide where we want to go there. So I really respect the people involved with MIBI. I know they've done a good job for our community. I also respect the people representing the delegation here tonight. And it's, I think, as Councillor Martman said, it's unfortunate that we have two groups basically competing for money for the same function. I think the fairest thing to do would be to leave this and decide on our longer term planning and decide how we want to spend our money in that way. Thank you. So I will not be supporting this recommendation.
Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Chair. This funding proposal was intended to be a stopgap measure while we have already proceeded along the path of setting up a set process to have proper community consultation with all parties and to create an economic development function. However, that process is going to take some time, more than 6 months, 8 months to complete, to go through the due process. And in that period, there are areas in economic development that need attention. MIBI and MTech have been providing support and community building in this area. They've provided a lot for the community over the last years while we have not had an economic development function, and have been doing a good job at attracting business in the community and working on issues around specifically in the tech sector. So for me, having a one-time stopgap funding for 6 months, and which will end, and then having the proper process, I think is a win-win. We have momentum in this community right now about supporting economic development, and I think that we need to carry on the momentum. I agree with the sentiments of Councillor Martman. I think we need to move forward as a community with collaboration and taking initiative. And the tone that this whole process has started off hasn't been good, and I really hope whatever direction this vote goes, that all the groups involved who are involved in technology and economic development can start working together, because we're all in the same team. And the funding that the city is going to provide needs to be divvied up in a way to meet these shared objectives. So I will be supporting this funding proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. When I was campaigning, I campaigned on the idea of attracting high-tech industry to our town and to our district here. And I also went out to a number of organizations and I said, council is going to be inundated with all kinds of work as we get started, and we're going to be on a huge learning curve. And any organization that can come to us with a proposal, with a budget, with deliverables, I would look on favorably. And this isn't exactly that. This is an organization that has been working tirelessly and at their own expense and the expense of the businesses who are supporting them to build economic development in our city. And all they're asking for is to be able to support for us to continue on that work that they've already been doing on for a long time already. And so I will be voting in favor of this. I also, regarding Councillor Martman, I'm a bit upset that this has come to this thing. I was completely out of the blue when all these things came down, and I just don't understand why, right? We should not be fighting with each other to build economic development in our city. We should all be working together and find ways that we can work together. So I know this is a one-off item. It's going to be for the short period of time. It's also covering a period of time where we will only be just beginning to talk about economic development in our city. And so I believe that this is a program that we should be supporting, and I will be voting in favor of it. Thank you.
Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too will be supporting this initiative. I think some of the things that need to be pointed out is that maybe, as Councillor Bonner's already said, is supported by, I think it's close to 20 leading businesses in Nanaimo. And that's money that's come out of their own pockets because they truly believe in economic development and the good it does for everybody. The issues that they've been dealing with have garnered momentum and starting to show some positive results. And if there's one thing that I always remember is that with regard to economic development, if you snooze, you lose.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to go back again when we talked about how this has divided the community. Well, there's a very simple way not to divide it, and that is to go to RFP, and then may the best proposal be chosen. Thank you.
I'm going to comment, and I'm going to start off as I like to with a little quote, and it's President Obama, I believe, who said something to the effect that don't let the pursuit of the perfect stand in the way of doing the good. And I echo the remarks of a number of my fellow councillors tonight who have pointed out that when this city, to some extent through its governance, has failed to pursue economic development in the way that every other community in this province does, Mibby stepped up and carried the can voluntarily. And arguably you could say for self-interest in the sense that they hope to indirectly benefit by increasing prosperity in our community. But that's not a causal connection. That's not like buying shares in a company or investing in a business directly. They were investing in the good of this community. And I am satisfied that they bring to their proposal a level of expertise and commitment that's already been demonstrated. I'm not as concerned about the division as some of my colleagues are here tonight because I believe that this community will understand that this is exactly what it is, which is the way it was discussed at the Finance and Audit Committee. It is a one-off. It is designed as a measure to fill a gap until we arrive and are satisfied at an economic development model. And for the delegation tonight and what they proposed, I'm appreciative of their comments and the effort they put into it. I'm appreciative of the words of the president of CUPE on behalf of Local 401 and the city workers who've indicated their views on what economic development should look like in our community. But having said that, at the end of the day, this, I think, is a good investment if there is risk involved, and there always is when one engages in this, when you're trying to attract the same kind of industry that everyone else is. But I believe this community brings to tech companies in particular a certain level of attraction that doesn't exist in other communities, and I would hate for us to delay any longer the possibility of attracting that industry when time is not our friend in this, it is our enemy. The longer we wait, I believe. So I will be voting for it. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you. I need to be really clear with council as well as with those listening that my voting against this is not a vote against MIBI. It is not a vote against MTech. These people have done amazing things for economic development in our community when the NEDC shut down. What I worry about is that it sets a precedent. If we put out to the community, we have $48,000 of contingency fund, tell us your economic development ideas, and then we assess them and chose, I think I'd be okay with that process, but we have one group coming forward, and as a result, it's in part causing this tension where we then have another delegation of people I respect coming forward and say, well, we would like $48,000 too. And I would like to remind Council, if I may be so bold, we had a very comprehensive discussion this morning of our strategic plan, the first pillar of which is good governance. And for me, following due process is good governance. Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I may, just to follow on Councillor Hemmens' comment, the other, and I certainly agree, it's not a vote against MIBI, and again, I really respect those people and what they've done for this community. But another concern that I failed to mention earlier goes to that contingency fund. And this funding would eat up basically half of our year's contingency fund. It was not in our budget. And that's another reason that I don't feel I can support this. Thank you.
No further speakers? All those in favor of the motion? Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you very much. The next, under reports, Ms. Mercer, the 2019-2023 Financial Plan Amendment Bylaw.
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff have been making updates to the provisional budget that Council adopted on January 14th, 2019, as more current information became available. We also updated the plan to include items that Council wished to add over the last 3 months. And based on all of these changes, we have a 5% tax increase, which is 1% for asset management and 4% for cost increases. And as mentioned in previous presentations, the city must have their financial plan adopted before May 15th in order to authorize expenditures for any of the updated changes. So tonight we're here looking for Council to give first 3 readings to the 2019 to 2023 Financial Plan Bylaw.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship.
The privilege goes to you.
I would move that the Financial Plan Amendment Bylaw 2019, number 7279.01, to amend the 2019-2023 Financial Plan, holy cow, plan, pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Motion opposed. Motion's carried.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that the Financial Plan Amendment Bylaw 2019, number 7279.01, pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
And I would move that the Financial Plan Amendment Bylaw 2019, number 7279.01, pass third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. The next is the 2019 Property Tax Rates Bylaw. Ms. Mercer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Based on the amount of revenue needed from taxation in the 2019 to 2023 financial plan, staff have calculated the 2019 tax rates, and the bylaw before you outlines the property tax rates for each property class for both the City of Nanaimo and the Regional District of Nanaimo. And the market value of a residential property increased by 10.53% in 2019. And with this increase, the average residential property is assessed at $516,418. And that results in about $2,102 in property taxes. And so tonight we're looking for Council to give first 3 readings to the 2019 property tax bylaw.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I would move that the property tax rates bylaw 2019, number 7287, to set the property tax rates for 2019 pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carried. Councillor Brown?
I would move that property tax rates bylaw 2019, number 7287, pass second reading.
I'm going to let Councillor Bonner second it this time, Councillor Thorpe, just out of a sense of generosity. Any discussion? All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carried. Councillor Brown?
Yes, I would move that property tax rates bylaw 2019, number 7287, pass third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next is the appointment of bylaw enforcement officer.
Item. Chief Fry is not in the audience this evening. This is pursuant to our bylaw enforcement bylaw that the appointment of officers needs to take place by council, and this is why it's brought forward this evening. There's a new person here.
Thank you very much. We've all read the material. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Armstrong, seconded Councillor Brown. Any discussion? All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next is the Georgia Greenway Phase 1 completion. Mr. Sims, firstly, thank you for the work that's already been done that Council happily opened on the weekend.
Your Worship, thank you very much. It's really the purpose of tonight's report is just to offer another opportunity to celebrate the opening of a very significant project and to thank Council for participating in the opening. It was well received, it was well attended, and albeit a little windy, it was a great afternoon. Nice to be able to have that in conjunction with Earth Day. And that's really the whole purpose of this report. I just wanted to reflect that one of the comments I heard from a community member was they'd been on the Greenway a number of times, and it really felt like it was the backbone of the community. And I think it speaks to certainly the city, but certainly Council's ethos in community building, and just wanted to make that point.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bonner, moving the motion to receive. Seconded. You don't want to second? Well, so I'm glad somebody's going to second it. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Mr. Sims, Opal Road traffic calming.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Rose is here in attendance this evening, and he can answer specific questions, but this, as he mentioned this afternoon in his presentation, that this has been a bit of an issue with shortcutting between Rock City Road and Uplands Drive, and after a fairly extensive study, engagement with the neighborhood, and following the city's traffic calming guidelines, there's a proposal in front of you to do a partial road closure in a sense that would prevent that shortcoming. It would still allow residents to come out of Opal Road onto Rock City, but perhaps discourage those wishing to shortcut from Rock City onto Opal.
Thank you very much. The motion, Councillor Turley, are you moving the motion? Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hemmons. Any discussion? Councillor Turley. Or, well, pardon me. Well, Councillor Armstrong, I think you're trying to move it.
Go ahead.
Councillor Turley.
So, Your Worship, to staff, is there any concern regarding an impact on emergency response time through this?
Through Your Worship, I've actually had conversations with fire services about this, and we've discussed the need for them to get to and from properties to the northeast, and they haven't identified it as any concern to them, but we are going to discuss the details of the actual partial closure to determine if there is a need to allow for some sort of bypass for them.
Thanks.
Councillor Armstrong. Thank you. Pardon me, I think, no, we've got Councillor Brown next.
I was actually
Will you defer to Councillor Brown kindly? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and Councillor Armstrong. Through you, Your Worship, first a question. Has there been accidents on this road within the context of this sort of grid there that requires the partial closure?
Through Your Worship, through the first round of traffic calming that we did back in 2008, there was a bit of a collision history. Now we're dealing primarily with volume. So we've addressed the speeding issues with the speed humps, but now we're just dealing with the high volumes of people shortcutting between the two major roads.
Thank you. And a follow-up, if I may. Has there been an analysis about the potential stress that it would cause on the intersections that we're actually trying to push them to?
So the two intersections that we do want them to use are the intersections of Rock Cedar Road and Departure Bay Road, and Departure Bay Road and Uplands Drive. And those are intersections that have been on our radar for quite a while regarding traffic volumes and whether or not we should be considering a traffic signal. At this point in time, even with the diversion, they're not at a threshold where we would consider a traffic signal, but we are going to continue to monitor them.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you to staff. Just a comment. I don't think I can support this because most research that I've been, looking at and sort of the direction other places seem to be going is to maintain a more distributed model of traffic flow, and it's more resilient. And this idea of funneling everything to collectors is just not a path that I can support. So I will not be voting in favor.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. One of the concerns I have is we only use the fire department for emergency services, and I've heard from ambulance and police that they would like to be consulted because their needs are much different than the fire department, especially the ambulance. So that's a concern. My second concern is that I will not be supporting it either. I do not believe in partial roadblocks because what happens is people just go around them and it actually causes more problems and more accidents. So I will not be supporting. Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, following up on Councillor Brown's comments, I will support this recommendation, but I'll be very interested, Mr. Rose, looking ahead as to the impact on those other intersections, especially the Uplands and Rock City or Departure Bay Road intersection. So my question is, if we find that volumes increase significantly at those two intersections, and we do possibly look at traffic signals, especially at the Uplands intersection, would then we go back to this decision and open up the road again? Is this, in other words, a temporary measure possibly? Can you answer that?
Through Your Worship, I think that it's something we could consider. I wouldn't be wanting to make any statements one way or another at this point, but I mean, we're talking about volumes probably in the order of about 500 vehicles per day to get the volume back down to where we would expect to see it for a local road. So applying that to our major road network and the intersections within that is actually fairly, there should be the tolerance to absorb that without too much impact. But it's something we can absolutely continue to monitor and reassess. And if we need to, we can always adapt and proceed in a different direction.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Himmons.
Thank you. I will be voting in favor of this. What I find compelling is the significant increase in traffic on that road, as well as the majority of those vehicles being non-resident. I happen to live on a street that is used often as a cut-through to avoid a major route, and what that means is folks who don't live on the street or in the neighborhood often don't drive as safely as people who do, and we have kids on the street everywhere. And so for me, traffic calming is something that we can offer to neighborhoods and to help families and children feel safe, so I'm in full support.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to be in support of this as well. I do have a question, though. What happens in the event that the lessening of traffic on Opal doesn't happen as you're hoping it does? What is your plan B, so to speak?
Through Your Worship, at this point we haven't developed a plan B. Opal Road is a unique road in that it's quite windy, it's quite narrow, and it's quite short. And the reality is it was only ever intended to serve the residents that are on it. In line with Councillor Brown's comment about creating redundancy in our network to diffuse things, further closures would really hamper that. So it's something, if we didn't see the reduction that we expect to, it's something we'd have to look at much more seriously, and it would take a much more aggressive step, and I don't think the community would support that. I think that there would have to become a greater tolerance for the behavior, for the traffic on that street, but I'd have to look in more detail as it evolves.
Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
Sorry, Your Worship, through you to Ms. Rosen. One last question. What about if that street was made one way? And then that would limit a lot of the traffic coming through. Like, obviously, if you had discussions with the residents, I think that would eliminate a lot of your problems. I'm just very concerned that people always go around those. Like, when you try and stop, they go around them. And we're going to have a head-on, especially because when you come around, it's the straight curve. Well, I don't have to tell you the road, the curve, and then you're head-on. I can foresee a head-on happening there very easily once that happens. Thank you.
For what it's worth, I'm going to support staff's recommendation. When I see the numbers around capacity for the road being approximately 1,000, it's 1,400. The people who are driving on that road are driving because they're anxious to get somewhere. I suspect they are somewhat impatient, and it's only a matter of time before there's some injury or death on that road. And being a grandfather and a father, I'm prepared to err on the side of caution in a situation like this. If it produces results that are not thought through or create problems at the other intersections, there will be an opportunity for us to review it at that time, and I'm sure staff will take a close look at it. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor of the motion? Contrary? Motion carries. Thank you. The next is economic development terms of reference. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're here this evening to further the discussion about where we go next with economic development in the community, and I've already heard some of that in your earlier deliberations this evening. Specifically, we're recommending that Council proceed with engaging a consultant that will complete their work under the terms of reference that are attached to this report. The idea is that they will go out, engage with a number of partners in the community, consult with our residents, and ideally bring back a recommendation that Council could then consider as part of your 2020 financial plan considerations. So again, the terms of reference are attached, and we're seeking Council's direction to commence with this work immediately.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lindsay. Councillor Martman.
Thank you. I'd like to move that the Council endorses the term of reference, economic development model, and direct staff to commence consultation work immediately.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Do that one. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. Discussion portion?
Yes.
I really appreciate this report in the terms of reference. My only question is, we have in here that we're going to be consulting with the general public. And the language that kind of made me sit up a bit taller is that we're going to engage with the wider community to identify priority areas for investment. And my question is, I think sometimes we engage for engagement's sake, and I would like to see, we have a number of experts in the community on economic development, and they're included in this consultation. I'm not quite seeing the value of doing that expert consultation and then bringing it to the public who, obviously will have opinions about how we spend our money, but are they really, are the public really the folks that we want to help design our economic development strategy? Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
I appreciate the concerns, but I do think the public will show us areas that they want us to focus on. Like whether it be the waterfront development, that might be an area they want us to focus economic development on, or maybe fill our empty mall spaces or like empty buildings. So I do see that there's a purpose for that. And there's also a lot of very good experts that are residents in our community that would not be captured by the key stakeholders. So for me, that's one area where I think that we would see where the community feels it's a good area for us to invest in. Thank you.
Mr. Rudolph.
Your Worship, just to clarify, I think the main intent is to consult with the major stakeholders that have interest in this. But by part of the process, it's always advisable to leave some opportunity for other interested persons and parties to comment and input into that process. But the main emphasis will be to look at the probably 10 or 12 agencies at least that are involved in some aspect of this, from the airport to the Port Authority to the Chamber. You know, there's quite a long list. The university, we're quite interested in this, but the general public probably would expect some opportunity to. So we'll map that out with the consultant in terms of that process, but the main one would be the stakeholders.
Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you. Well, first a comment. I have no real issue with the terms of reference as proposed for that process, but I am curious about supplementary or information that will augment our decision-making on this other than the feedback we receive through these roundtables. In particular, you know, like some fellow councillors, I had my reservations about the earlier proposal, just as I had reservations about the new proposal that was presented to us. In the absence of any environmental scans, to really say, okay, what should we actually be targeting if we are going to be targeting anything? So I'm through you to staff, are we going to be receiving reports around, having professionals come in, take a look at the environment, look at the context of Nanaimo, and say, this is markets that you may wish to explore, new industries that you may wish to attract. I get it. Everybody wants to attract tech. Look at just about every other major economic development plan for cities our size or smaller. They're after tech. It may be that we are well suited for that. I have no idea in the absence of environmental scans. So that would be my question. Are we going to be receiving that sort of information?
Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Brown, what I would say is, from staff's perspective, this would be very much the first step, the work that we're talking about tonight. The second step would be a refresh of our economic development strategy, and I think it's at that time, once you understand what the structure is and you're reviewing the strategy, that you would have those discussions about what are the priorities so they can be reflected in our strategy.
May I just follow up? I'm curious because this is all very new to me. So function would follow form, or form would follow function?
I think in this case we're looking at the function first of how do you want to operate this? What is the role of economic development? As Council's aware, we've went through both models of inside the city and outside through Economic Development Commission, and this is, we believe it's important to understand what the models we're going to work with. Whatever model is selected, we still think there needs to be work done on the economic development strategy, and going back to those important points that you've raised about, what are our focus areas and where is it that the community's going to focus our energies on. But we believe at this time, getting a handle on the model so that we can bring forward some recommendations for the financial plan is the first step.
My screen's just gone blank, but I believe Councillor Martin was there last time I checked.
Yeah, I was just going to, my understanding was this was just step one of our planning, and this was about us working with the stakeholders to determine the model of our economic development, but it isn't going into what we want to focus on. It's the strategy of how we're going to focus. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Thorpe, you popped up.
Yes,
Working.
thank you, Your Worship. Very quickly, I'll certainly support this, and as we've already heard earlier this evening, I think economic development is a priority which we can probably all agree on, and I think the sooner we can determine a model and start to move ahead with this, the better. So I don't have a problem with any of the terms of reference, and I look forward to getting this work done as quickly as possible. And I think we need to acknowledge the work that's been done by Ms. Manhas single-handedly during this time in which we have not had a really fulsome economic development office, but there has been work done by her and also by volunteers in the community. So we're grateful for that, but we need to get something more permanent in place, and hopefully the sooner the better. Thank you.
Thank you, and I will echo Councillor Thorpe's words in gratitude to Ms. Manhas and staff generally who've helped get us to this point. Seeing no further speakers, all those in favor? Contrary? Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next is development permit application number DP 1127337 Robson Street. It's a late item. Mr. Lindsay.
Sorry, Your Worship, I seem to be having technical difficulties. My mic is on.
You're green for me, so.
Thank you. So as you mentioned, we have a development permit for the subject property. This is for an additional 31 units of rental within the downtown, so an exciting project for us. And as outlined in the report, we'd also note that the proposed construction is of a modular construction. We would note that simply because this is the first of a number of projects that are contemplating using this building technology, and that the sites are constructed largely in factory and then brought to the property and put together on site. It does not speak to the end user. This is simply the building approach that's being used, and again, it's for purpose-built rental units. There are two variances that are being requested. The first is a height variance, and if I can ask that, I believe it's Schedule G, Attachment G in the report, if council was to look at those, if I could get those pulled up on the screen, you would see the images of the building. So the height variance applies to only a portion of the upper floor, which actually projects above the 12-meter height. There's also an issue of grade on the property, which requires the height variance. The second variance being requested is a parking variance from 14 to 12. There's actually 11 spaces that are being 11 spaces which are being provided on the property. The applicants are buying out one space, which is permitted under our parking bylaw. Up to 10% of the units can be bought out at $10,000 a stall, which leaves two remaining spaces. In this case, the applicants have come to an arrangement with the neighboring property owner to allow a short-term encroachment agreement to allow for parking on that property. So there'll be two additional sites there. And the applicants have also entered into an agreement, or will be entering into an agreement with Modo, the car share program, to provide an additional vehicle, and that there will be an opportunity for that vehicle to be parked. Perfect. If we could just leave it on that slide for a sec. There'll be an opportunity for that vehicle to be parked on Fitzwilliam, which is noted on the upper portion of this slide. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, through you to Mr. Lindsay. Is there any other buildings in town that have been given a city parking spot free of charge to park a vehicle?
Your Worship, and I should have clarified this, this parking space is not specifically for this building. It's for the Modo car share program, and there are, and I'm sorry, Mr. Rose could answer this question better, but I'm aware of at least two other locations on public streets where we have provided car share priority for parking.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe, you're going to make the motion?
Actually, I had a
question.
I had a question or a comment, if I may, Your Worship, before the motion. To Mr. Lindsay, thank you. Regarding the car share, I guess what I basically would like to do is congratulate the proponents for suggesting this. And I don't know if there's a way the city can monitor it, but I know a car share has been tried in at least one other development in town, and to be honest, was not successful. So I would be interested down the road in hearing, if possible, how this works out, and if it in fact is an effective tool for reducing parking. And that, I realize, may not be possible, but it's something I'm curious about. Thank you. And having said that, Your Worship, if I may, I will move the recommendation.
Excellent. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Hemmons. Councillor Armstrong.
And that's on the variance. Does that block the views of the other buildings behind? Because some of those buildings will have ocean views. Would that be blocking their views?
Your Worship, I note that staff, in the staff report, there's indicated that it have limited impact on upland views. What I would say is in the downtown, our view priorities are along public corridors and rights-of-way. and it's those view areas that we prioritize in protecting. I think any time that you build a new building, there's the potential that somebody from a private view uphill will be impacted. So I would expect at some point, I don't want to sit here and say absolutely nobody will be impacted. I suspect if you go far enough up in the old city, there'll be somebody who perceives that their view is impacted by a building on this site.
And further, also the shadowing. Has a study been done on shadowing for the other residents around there?
I'm sorry, I'm not aware if a shadow study's been done. Normally they would be included as part of staff's package that we review. The primary impact would be the office building, which is immediately to the, I guess I'd describe it to the west of the property. The property to the north, which would be impacted, is a parking lot at this point, so minimal impact.
Thank you.
If I can give you any comfort, my accountant is Roden Associates. They haven't complained yet. They're going to lose the view. Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I'd like to make a comment with regard to modular type construction. Three of us had the opportunity to go to Port Alberni on Friday to visit. Actually, it was a supportive housing development that was done in a modular fashion, and I was absolutely blown away by. Did any of you see any cracks in the drywall or anything like that? And it was absolutely amazing. So it could be the construction method for that type of thing for the future. The other question I have is with regard to the height of the building. How does this compare to the height of the building that was constructed just north of the courthouse? And I can't remember, it's near across the street from the old high-rise. I think it's 5 stories.
Worship, I believe that building is 6 stories from memory. I hope I'm correct. And then this one is basically a podium for parking with 4 stories of residential on top. So, of course, with the cross grade on the property, it'll read differently from the upper street than it will from the lower street. From Robson, it'll read as a 5-story building.
Thank you.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. I would just like to express that I find this development quite exciting. It is infill in our downtown. It's purpose-built rental. It has a lower environmental footprint because of its modular form. It has a green roof. It's contributing a car share parking stall. I just think this touches upon so many things that we know we need to do downtown. So I'm just really excited about it. I want to express that.
And I concur with Councillor Hemmons. This is exactly what the city hopes for. It's what most of us campaigned on in the last election, was densification downtown. Get people out of their cars and within walking distance of our businesses and our community. So this is as good as it gets as far as I'm concerned. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carries. Thanks very much. The next is Development Variance Permit Application Number DVP 330-2067 and 2073 Boxwood Road. Mr. Lindsay, I think, what do we do? Ms. Gurry, do we let Mr. Lindsay speak first or ask the delegation to speak first?
You can let Mr. Lindsay introduce the report and then you can invite the delegation up.
Very good. Number 1 as always.
Thank you, Your Worship. As outlined in the report, this is a development variance permit application for a number of variances related to signage on the subject property. And in general, these all speak to sign restrictions that are currently in place around the Nanaimo Parkway. The general intent of our bylaw being to limit the limit signs that can be seen from the parkway. In this case, there's some unusual property configurations here. Maybe if I can ask that. I believe it's attachment G is the air photo, and give you an idea if council can turn to attachment G. We have no one to pull it up on the screen for me apparently, but a G in your package, and attachment C, more importantly, is the site plan. If we can put attachment C up, shows the site plan. Sorry, thanks, Derek. So G, there's the air photo, so there shows the 2 properties in question and the relationship to Nanaimo Parkway. And then on attachment C, we'll show you the proposed signage and what's being varied. And you can see here the freestanding sign is actually on one property, but it's actually
at providing advertisement for the other property just because of the simple configuration and the desire to have signage on Boxwood. So again, the bylaw deters signage on the parkway, but allows for businesses to advertise on their access road, which in case is Boxwood. So from staff's perspective, the variances are meeting the intent of our bylaws, and we're supportive of the request.
Thank you very much. We do have a delegation, Raymond Beald and Dave, is it Pollock or Pollack? Gentlemen, welcome. 5 minutes. The light turns orange at 4 minutes, so you'll have a minute left at that point. Please.
Your Worship and Council, I'm Dave Pollock, and I appreciate the opportunity to stand before you. I think we've worked with the city staff within both the terms and the spirit of the bylaw. Our concern, other than to advertise our business, is to provide a safe passage on Boxwood Road. We service the heavy truck industry, as does our neighbor. And having heavily loaded trucks wander around Boxwood not knowing where to turn is a real concern to us. And I think we've already demonstrated, working with city staff, that we've widened the road to accommodate these trucks at that location. Really, as far as I'm concerned, I'm here to answer any questions that you may have towards this.
Mr. Beald?
No other comments other than if there's questions by council.
Very good. You took less than a minute. If there were prizes, I'd give you one. Questions from council. Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to the delegation. We actually visited the site, I can't remember what day it was, but and I seem to recall seeing some sort of a cove over one of the areas where signage was going. Perhaps you could explain that. On the face of the building, it tried to hide the sign from...
Yes, on the main building where we were to advertise P&R Truck Center, which is our name, Raymond has designed a tower which sticks out from the building, hiding that from the parkway. And there are aerial or street view signs available to show that view of the sign is restricted from the parkway.
No further questions?
Actually, I have one comment.
Councillor Turley?
Sorry. The mind works slowly sometimes. I also would like to point out that, and I don't know if I would do this now, or because it really isn't a question of the delegation.
If it's not of the delegation, we can ask staff in a moment.
Okay, that's fine.
That's it, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak to DVP 330? I think I have to ask 3 times, Ms. Gurry. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to DVP 330 for a third and final time? Seeing no one, would someone care to make the motion? Councillor Bonner, seconded. Councillor Turley. Any discussion with respect to this? You had a question, Councillor Turley.
Yes, it's more of a comment than a question. Over the weekend, I was spending a lot of time in the arenas adjudicating lacrosse referees and drove the parkway for a number of times back and forth. And it was very obvious to me that until some of the trees are leafed out, there's numerous businesses where signage can be seen from the parkway. And so it's, it's not like this is a one-time situation. It's happened before.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I will support this recommendation, but I'll say that when I first read of it or heard of it, I was not inclined to, because I support our city bylaw, which is aimed at preventing advertising along the parkway, and I think that's a good thing. But I think each individual situation needs to be looked at carefully on its own merits. And in this case, I think I can support the variances, so I will vote in favor of it.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will also be voting in favor of this. I did attend a session at or a meeting at the place where these signs are going up. It was Thursday, by the way, Councillor, Thursday. And I think that the owner has gone to a lot of work and trouble to make sure that these signs aren't seen from the parkway. And I think this is a fabulous example of really being a really good neighbor and working with the city to make sure that the intent of the bylaw is represented, even though it is within the 200 meters. So, and also, I also noticed that while I rode there on my bike, because I want to live around the corner, both the other two councillors got lost and drove around the place a couple of times because they couldn't find it. And I do remember the proponents speaking that if one of those trucks misses the entrance, they're now going through residential areas to get back. And I think that's a safety issue as well. So I would be definitely in support. And I thank staff for coming up with this rather unique solution.
Thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong.
And I just also would like to thank the owner because they, at their own expense, did widen the road for the big trucks, which I think, again, goes to good neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further speakers, all those in favor? Contrary, motion carried. Thank you very much. The next is rezoning application number RA 407-6683 Mary Ellen Drive. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you mentioned, the next item is a rezoning application on the subject property, which is known as Woodgrove Crossing, the commercial plaza in the north end of the city, for a site-specific rezoning for a cannabis retail store. I would note, Your Worship, this is the first application that Council's considered for a government-run store, and the reason I would note that the conditions of approval will be slightly different. So unlike private stores, which will then require the province to approve the license before Council will consider adoption of the bylaw, there is no similar process here for government stores. They're not subject to that same licensing requirement. So in this case, once the community contribution has been provided and we obtain necessary approvals from the Ministry of Highways, we'll bring it back to Council for fourth reading.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I would move that zoning amendment bylaw 2019 number 4500 142 to rezone 6683 Mary Ellen Drive to allow cannabis retail store as a site-specific use in the Woodgrove Urban Centre, the CC4 zone, pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Councillor Brown.
Yes, I would move that zoning amendment bylaw 2019 number 4500 142 pass second reading.
Seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. The question I have is this store going to be connected with a liquor store, or is it strictly cannabis only?
Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. The stores, there is certainly no government store at this location at this time, and there's not been any proposals, to the best of my understanding, that there will be any any that are being considered at this time. So it'll be simply a government cannabis store at those locations.
Councillor Turley, I don't know if it'll give you any comfort, but my recollection from my previous occupation was that the legislation doesn't permit cannabis and alcohol to be sold in the same premise.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carries. Councillor Brown.
I would move that Council direct staff to secure the amenity contribution prior to the adoption of the bylaw, should Council support the bylaw at third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Rezoning application number RA 408, 3200 Island Highway North. Mr. Lindsay again.
Thank you, Worship. And sticking with the current theme, we have another rezoning application for government cannabis store, this time at 3200 Island Highway, which is, of course, Country Club Mall. In this case, the applicants are proposing a new build on the property, a new pad building, and are proposing that this use would be contained within that building.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that zoning amendment bylaw 2019 number 4500.143 to rezone 3200 Island Highway North to allow cannabis retail store as a site-specific use in the City Commercial Center, CC3 zone, pass first reading.
Seconded. Councillor Martman. Any discussion? No, none of that's first reading. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that zoning amendment bylaw 2019 number 4500.143 pass second reading.
Seconded. Councillor Hemmens. Any discussion? All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carries. Councillor Brown.
And finally, I would move that Council direct staff to secure the amenity contribution prior to adoption of the bylaw, should Council support the bylaw at third reading.
Seconded. Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Bylaws. We have a bylaw status sheet. It's for information only. Correspondence from the District of the Highlands regarding local government survivor climate challenge. Councillor Gesselbrock.
I was wondering if I could speak to this. The council and mayor of Highlands spoke to at the AVICC conference that many of us attended, and their council put forward an idea of a climate survivor challenge where basically members of the council go do a quick 10-minute online survey about different consumption patterns, and it calculates what your CO2 emissions are for the year and how many hectares of land it takes to sustain your lifestyle. And then once you do that survey, you just do the average of your entire council and you send it to Highlands, and then they look and they have a bit of a competition to see what council has the lowest. And then the following year they follow up and you do the challenge again, and they see which council has improved their ability to reduce their CO2 emissions. And so put forward, I've written up a motion. I don't know if it's the appropriate time to do it, but that we join in this climate challenge. And I think it would be interesting for council to participate in it at very little effort. So Ms. Gurry, is it okay if I put a motion forward at this moment on this?
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Gesselbrock, how about after other business, as soon as the other motion that is under consideration tonight, you put forward your motion?
Wonderful, thank you.
We'll put you down the list. Next is notices of motion. We have one from Councillor Martman regarding bottled water.
Thank you. Thank you. I make the motion first and then I speak to it, right? That council...
You're bringing forward the following notice of motion for consideration at a future meeting.
Right.
Yeah, Your Worship, just to clarify for process purposes, the notice of motion will be read out by Councillor Martman tonight, but won't be discussed or considered until the next meeting.
Right. Okay. So the notice of motion is that council directs staff to report back to council regarding options for consideration of a bylaw that prohibits the bottling of groundwater within the city of Nanaimo to help protect groundwater today and for the future. If I can get a seconder?
No, not till
We don't need a seconder.
Oh, I don't need
Just giving us notice.
Okay. Thank you.
And now we'll go to number 2. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Your notice of motion.
Correct, Ms. Gurry?
Yes, or if, rather than a notice of motion, it could be under other business as business arising from the correspondence. So no notice of motion is necessary. Councillor Gesselbrock could just make a motion under other business. It depends on which way council would like to proceed.
Getting punted further and further down the list.
Let's do that.
All right. Now, under other business, however, we do have a motion, and that's Councillor Brown's motion, but we have a delegation, firstly. Francis Deverell. Ms. Deverell, welcome. You know the rules, I'm sure. 5 minutes, turns orange at 4, please.
Thank you. I also have with me Mia Yonkind and my delegation behind me from the Council of Canadians Mid-Island Chapter. Your Worship, City Councillors, and members of the audience, thank you for this opportunity to speak with you on Sunemu unceded territory. I come here with my delegation from the Council of Canadians to ask you to support this motion to declare a climate emergency. The Swedish 16-year-old Greta Thunberg puts it this way: why should she sit in school and learn facts when adults don't act based on the facts? She asks us to listen to the science and give us a future. We have 11 years to get our greenhouse gases under control. Canada has never made its international emissions targets, and our emissions continue to go up every year. We are still in denial. The time is past for expanding infrastructure for fossil fuels. We must build the economy of our city based on green energy, not coal, oil, and gas. And the cheapest source of energy of all, conservation and energy efficiency. The Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment have told us that the health impacts of climate change are catastrophic and buried. Here, we have already experienced the cardiorespiratory impacts of heavy smoke sitting over the city for weeks at a time, making it impossible to get a breath of clean air. In Quebec, there have been deaths from heat stroke. All over Canada, people are suffering from PTSD and trauma from forced emergency evacuations going on right in front of us on the TV every night. Lyme disease is just the first of many new deadly diseases we will face as our climate warms. In the Children's Strike for Climate Action, the children are claiming the right to a decent future. This municipal movement to declare climate emergencies is a grassroots movement asking our leaders to make climate action a priority. We must reduce our own pollution and prepare for what will happen because we have failed to act years ago. We can expect rising sea levels. Are we planning for it? Climate action must be the lens through which we do city planning. Increase density to support more transit. I see you're already on track. Support a transition to more bikes, more bike lanes. Support the developing infrastructure for electric cars so that we can have more confidence to buy them. If you are building city buildings or low-cost housing, build them to the greenest standards. If we have to choose between the fishery and the health of our oceans or the oil industry, we must choose the health of the natural world. Let's take over our watershed and protect our old-growth forest. They tell me they're cutting it down at the rate of 3 soccer fields a day on Vancouver Island. Old growth resists the forest fires and doesn't allow them to spread so fast. And yet, I read last week there are people with plans to cut every last old-growth tree.
1 minute, Ms. Deverell.
I heard some of you are asking if this declaration will involve some liability. I ask you, if we fail to act on this climate emergency, what liabilities will we incur? Cities across Canada are declaring a climate emergency. With enough support, this movement will move up to the provincial and even the federal level. The UK Parliament is debating such a motion this week. As the higher levels of government join in, we can declare a war to tackle climate change. We can focus resources at every level on making this transition. From having no aerospace industry before the war, we made 16,000 military planes by the end of the war. We can do it. We can turn this ship around. We know what to do. We have the technology. We just have to do it. Please join this movement, support the motion, and direct city staff to make climate change the first criteria in city planning. Thank you.
Please. I much appreciate the enthusiasm, but frankly, it goes the other way. This is a council chamber. This is not an audience participation arrangement, but I appreciate your enthusiasm.
Yes.
Ms. Deverell, I'm sure we have some questions.
Can I just say to Councillor Martman, thank you for your motion on the water issue. Council of Canadians came to this council a few years ago and asked to become a blue community, and I believe you have done that. And it's a good reminder and a good build on that.
Thank you very much. Sorry.
Questions.
Councillor Gesselbrock?
Thank you, Your Worship. Ms. Deverell, just curious, were you also submitting something as well to council?
Well, I believe it was electronically submitted to you earlier today. We've presented petitions gathered at the Earth Day event at John Barsby. A total of 210 names in support of our motion. Thank you for reminding me.
Any further questions to the delegation? Thank you very much. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm a little unclear on procedure because there's a resolution and then 4 subsequent motions, so I would seek your guidance or the clerk's guidance on that.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Councillor Brown, whatever your pleasure is, Councillor Brown. If you wanted to read all of the whereases, or if you just want to move to your motions, you could do that as well.
Move to the motions.
Just for clarity's sake, it's been a while since I've read that. I just was curious if it would be possible for Councillor Brown to read it all out clearly.
If I may, Your Worship.
I can sense Councillor Brown is anxious to read the whole thing and cut. No?
Actually, no.
No? Councillor Gesselbrock, you're out of luck. I'm deferring to Councillor Brown.
But I will move the resolution and then follow it up with the motions. And I'll speak to the resolution, try to keep it brief, and then I can speak to the individual motions as well to provide some context. So I intentionally tried to give a lot of time, to give council a lot of time to digest this, come to the conclusions, and also provide some background information. So I will move the resolution. I believe I need a seconder. Thank you. So if I may, first I just want to thank Councillor Martman for sort of a couple months showing leadership and putting forward a similar sentiment. And I would also like to thank community member Peter Urquhart. He actually helped me do a lot of research because I originally was very skeptical about the utility of these motions, and he was a great resource in going through a lot of them to find some wording that, in our discussions we felt was meaningful, and helping me sort of distill some potential actions. This isn't a resolution that I would like to bring forward. In 1988, James Hansen, then with NASA, provided congressional testimony on global warming. And the urgent need for action then was clear. But it's also clear, 3 decades later, almost my entire life, that we have failed to act. It's almost been the contrary. The problem is now much worse. And 3 decades from now, when my 2 sons, Felix and Damon, will be the same age as I am now, we need to have solved the problem of global warming. So it's time to act. The task is monumental. It requires us to confront the issue with honesty and accountability. It requires us to make decisions on scientific evidence, but it also requires faith. Faith that we can and we will overcome the greatest challenge facing us without having all the answers right now. I believe Greta Thunberg referred to this as cathedral thinking, the idea that we must lay the foundation without necessarily knowing how the roof will be built. And we also need to have faith that others will do their part as well, because we are one municipality, but it is a global problem. But we are out of time. Truly, we are out of time. And that faith can only be premised on immediate action. And so for each and every one of you at this table, I'm absolutely proud to come to sit here. I've learned something about leadership. I've learned something about accountability and integrity almost every single meeting. And I thought it was really wonderful that Councillor Turley this morning was suggesting some potential meat on the bones of moving this sentiment forward. And from our community, I've also learned that time and time again, we can achieve what we can achieve when we come together around a common purpose. I really felt that spirit this weekend at John Barsby as we opened the Georgia Greenway, a city project that was complemented by a wonderful community event. So it is with absolute confidence and optimism that I believe we will do our part to overcome the challenge of global warming. The motions I've put forward, I think, are modest. I think they're a start. It's a belief that our staff will help us fill this out. It's a belief that our community will come together and help us achieve these goals. And because of that, I have hope for the future. Not necessarily for myself, but for my two boys, Damon and Felix, the oldest, who is just over a year and a half. Because since becoming a parent, I've really realized one thing, that our time here is short, and that ultimately we are simply memories for our children, memories for future generations, and hopefully a memory that they are proud of. So thank you. Thank you for considering the motion, and I can speak to the other four motions separately if there's any additional questions.
Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to whoever wants to listen. First of all, I will. I knew that would get you, Cheryl. I will support the motion. However, as Councillor Brown said, I find it long on hope and short on solutions. However, it is a starting point for developing, and this is where the scary, well, it's not really the scary part, but the unpopular part is there's going to be many unpopular solutions to reverse the increase of atmospheric CO2. Those that believe that electrification of transportation is the only solution, in my opinion, are living in a dream world. There is a need for unpopular solutions that can produce and push back, that will produce some pushback. And these include selective logging, and the reason for that is you need to reduce the volume of CO2 that's being produced for the unproductive debris on the forest floor, and replant with new growth, which will increase the photosynthetic rate and increase the metabolic rate of these new trees that are growing rapidly. We must also welcome industrial developments that will use CO2 as a raw material. There's new technology being developed today that I think indicated to Councillor Brown. I think we should be pushing to try to get some of that development here in Nanaimo or on the island. I don't have any concern about my colleagues understanding the need for these numerous options, but my concern is that a lot of it can be taken out of context when some people actually believe what they read in social media and believe it's gospel. In conclusion, we also need to develop a cooperation with senior governments so that when they implement a discouraging taxation on fossil fuels, that money is to be solely used for research to develop new technology to reduce CO2 in the atmosphere as opposed to general revenue. Thank you.
Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very excited to pass this motion. There's a growing number of Canadian municipalities that are taking leadership in facing our climate crisis with committed action. Declaring a climate emergency, in my opinion, is definitely not alarmist. It's being realist. The extreme weather events due to our CO2 emissions that we are already experiencing here in Nanaimo are costing the city incredible amounts of money, and it's disrupting the lives of our community members. At the rate that our climate is changing, it is placing our children and our grandchildren in danger. It's not right. And we have the opportunity as Canadians to be leaders in transforming our world to the clean, green economy of the future. We either do it now on our own terms, or we force our kids to do it in much worse conditions later. Many of us councillors were at the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities, where over 200 mayors and councillors gathered and resolutions were put on the floor, and a climate emergency resolution was declared to be brought forward to the province. And it's really exciting. This movement's growing and to change the direction our world's heading, and I think we will succeed if we all do our part. So yeah, I'd like to acknowledge as well Councillor Martman for putting this motion and taking initiative and leadership early on in the game and respectfully retracting it so that Council could go through its due process during strategic planning. And then I really appreciate Councillor Brown, who reintroduced the motion and expertly fleshed it out with some very concrete actions that we can take so that we're not just doing a meaningless declaration, but really rallying for sustained action. So as part of these actions, I'm excited for our community to set very ambitious sustainability goals. Taking action on climate change has been shown to go hand in hand with improving public health, improving economic growth, and raising living standards. And I just read a great book by Bloomberg, the mayor of New York and multi-billionaire, who really shows that taking climate action is the best way for economic development. So I think that's going to be a large part of our plan moving forward. I'll excitedly be voting in favor of this motion, and I'm looking forward to working with this council and all the great ideas that are coming out of it with our incredible staff and also our community that's rallying behind a really focused, committed action. So thank you.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. I had written some notes, but we've had a very long day, and I'm just going to speak briefly and from the heart, and that is to share that reading the IPCC report worried me tremendously as a community leader, but quite terrified me as a mother, as someone who's raising the next generation. I think we have legitimate reason as a community to be very frightened for our future. For those who haven't read the report or aren't familiar with the research, basically my kind of summary of it is that we're in serious trouble. And if we don't act now, we're in really serious trouble. Like it's kind of choosing between bad and really, really bad. So I really applaud Councillor Brown for bringing this forward, and I thank Councillor Martman for kind of getting that ball rolling. I appreciate the specificity of having those 4 accompanying motions with some real kind of things that we can do to start this conversation. Like Councillor Turley, I am very much looking forward to working with everyone at this table, working with staff, and working with the broader community to really put some meat on the bones of how we're going to approach this, because we literally, in my opinion, do not have an option. So thank you, everyone, and I really hope people will support this.
Councillor Thorpe.
I'm not sure I want to speak, Your Worship, but I will. And I appreciate Councillor Martman and Councillor Brown's efforts at bringing this forward. But I admit I'm a little confused, and I agonized on the weekend because I could not accept the wording of what was presented to us as a motion. And now I'm hearing that this is a resolution with subsequent motions. That changes my thinking a little bit. I can accept it as a resolution. As Councillor Geselbrecht indicated, the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities has already passed a similar type of resolution. So, this bandwagon has sort of started to sail already, and maybe that's a good thing. So I can support that. I will have some questions about the specific motions, and I will want some information from staff on those. A couple of them refer to other levels of government, because this is a global issue. It's provincial, it's federal, it's worldwide. But although, of course, I want to protect the environment, and I recognize the value in motions to do that, I also have to remember that my mandate at this table is to deal with issues that we can directly affect for the citizens of Nanaimo. And by that I mean keeping our streets clean and safe, providing basic services and amenities that people want while keeping their taxes reasonably low. So those are the sort of nuts and bolts issues that I think this table has responsibility for. And the global issues, yes, I think we should always keep a lens on everything we do as an environmental lens. But when we declare an emergency, to me, that means you drop everything else and deal with that emergency. And I can't accept that. So I know it's an important issue that requires attention, but I also want to be realistic, and I want to deal at this table with things that are practical and then make a day-to-day difference in our community. So will I support the resolution? Yes, I will. But I need to say that I do have some concerns about it. And attached to that resolution were 47 pages of supporting documentation, which I read. And let's be fair, though, not everybody accepts that science, including the former head of Greenpeace. So there are differences in the community. No, not everybody agrees, and people are entitled to have their viewpoints. So I support the environment, I support Councillor Brown's resolution, but I need to make those reservations clear. Thank you.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is what I kind of refer to as a 50,000-foot resolution. It's quite encompassing, but it sets a tone for the way this council will move forward. It sets a tone on how we will deal with issues at the local level. So it will set the tone of when we decide to sweep our streets, we're going to do it with electric vehicles, or that's what we're going to move forward to. I think this resolution really sets a tone of where we want to be in the future, and I, for one, am honored to be part of a council that is willing to take this type of leadership role. And I look forward to the years that we have ahead of us to implement as much of this as possible, because as I said before, if in the event that we do go over this cliff, I don't want anybody pointing the finger at Nanaimo and saying, we didn't do our part. So this is us doing our part, and I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Councillor Martman.
Thank you. In response to Councillor Thorpe's climate emergency, I think the word emergency that's being looked at as, oh, that's something we have to do, and we have to do something, we have to do it now. I think the climate emergency is an emergency, because if you look in the big picture and the thousands and millions of years that the world has existed, we have a nanosecond to actually correct this. And because of that, it is actually an emergency.
Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Worship. Just a point of process. I'm sorry, I got a little bit confused when Councillor Thorpe was speaking. So the motion on the floor right now is the first one of Councillor Brown's, or all four of them? Just number one right now. Okay, so and on number one, and this is just for a point of clarity, I don't believe Ms. Mercer is here anymore, but just in case there... Okay, so resolutions and motions have the same effect here in my office. Like when a council makes a motion, we call it resolutions as well. But I understand the way Councillor Brown has worded this. The resolution is the first part, and then the motions are the second, or vice versa. I'm not sure.
To Ms. Curry. Essentially, it would be 5 motions without the distinction of, I should have caught that on when I was reviewing it, but essentially it's 5 motions. The first one is intended as a statement with no action. The subsequent 4 motions are intended actions.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Councillor Brown, I understand now. So now right now you're discussing the therefore be it resolved, that resolution. I have it. Thank you. And then just forward before, so I don't have to speak again and wreck your flow of great conversation. And if you do get to the number 1 regarding the funds for the Regional Emissions Reduction Reserve, I don't believe Ms. Mercer is here anymore, but I just want, because she's not, there may be, like, just from the financial aspect of that, I'm sure it will work and be able to be done. It just might not be immediately be able to be done, and staff would report back to you on any implications that there might be with creating a new reserve. But I see she is here, so when you get to that, she can speak to that.
I'll let Councillor Armstrong speak, and then we'll give Ms. Mercer a moment.
I just want to say, I'm not going to support any of the motions without reports. I think that we need to know what the funding is, where it's going to come from, what the cost factors are. So for me, it's really important for that, and that's exactly what Ms. Gurry said about the things. I do, too, believe that the climate is changing. I think it always has. I think we as humans are making it accelerate even faster. So I support a lot of these, but I need to know the cost factors, because if we're talking, 20,000 annual public, is that $50 million, and where do we get the dollars from? So I really need to know that before I can support some of that. So I'll be asking for reports. Thank you.
Mr. Rudolph.
Your Worship, I would like to augment the comments of the clerk tonight in terms of process. I'd be a bit uncomfortable for staff to be volunteering verbal opinions on the fly, on the floor, without a written report. I think that's a little dangerous precedent, so it'd be better, generally speaking, on the flow of notices of motion if they were followed up by or in conjunction with the staff report, so that we're clear on the intended and unintended consequences of any motion. So that would be procedurally one consideration. So I think you could get some verbal comments tonight, but it's not something that I would say you would have the complete confidence that everything that's been thought of for that. So we weren't prepared to, at a staff level, to necessarily unpack each of those statements, though they're pretty straightforward. So I just ask for some, what's council's pleasure in terms of process. So the other comments I'd like to make is certainly council has been developing a strategic plan, and it's a draft, and it's got one of its 4 themes is environment, and it seems to be perhaps, apart from governance, the most intentional part of the strategic plan. So it's clear that this is nested in a strategic priority for council. So that's one thing. The second thing is council is scheduled to have a pretty robust and full-day workshop on the subject of environment in May, and so you will have an opportunity to further visit ideas and topics. And so in an ideal world, and we were knowing that we've already had a conversation earlier tonight about an ideal world, things sometimes don't necessarily all line up, and maybe these are so obvious that you don't necessarily have to wait to go through that process. But I would just want you to be mindful that we do have some process to go through, which may change or add to, I guess, this notice of motion. And I did speak with Councillor Brown earlier about it, and he feels confident that he's showing leadership and that type of thing, and I'm not disputing that. It's just making sure that we're all clear on what the consequences are of what those words mean for municipalities, and that you feel you have sufficient information at your disposal at this time to make the decision that you want to make around any of this information, which is, it's all fine.
Thank you, Mr. Rudolph. Ms. Curry, I noted you were on the list, and then you've...
Your Worship, I was just going to remind council and staff that right now, the resolution on the floor is, therefore be it resolved that the City of Nanaimo officially declare a climate emergency for the purposes of identifying and deepening our commitment to protecting our economy, our ecosystems, and our community from global warming. So that is what's on the floor right now.
I'm not sure what council's wish is, but I might suggest that perhaps we deal with that tonight. Yes. And then we defer the other 4 motions as such as they're worded, all right, to another date. Am I sensing a general consensus on this? Councillor Hemmons is first.
I'm happy to stick with the first motion. I believe that the motions as they're written are pretty clear and straightforward and actually don't require staff reports. But if the majority of council feels that we need to wait, but in the meantime we do declare the climate emergency and set that foundation, I would be satisfied.
Thank you. Councillor Martman.
Thank you. I had pressed that I wanted to speak when I at least wanted us at very minimum to vote for the resolution. I didn't have as much issues, but with all due respect, getting feedback from staff and having notice of motions for those 4 items, that means they will come back to us within a couple of weeks anyways with a little bit of additional information. But I definitely wanted to have a vote on the resolution today. Thank you.
As we're dealing with 5 separate resolutions, or motions, properly speaking, might I suggest, if there's no further discussion on the first, that we vote on the first and take a separate decision, obviously, on the others. All those in favor of the first motion? Contrary? Motion carries. Councillor Brown, I'm going to look to you because these are your motions.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Worship. I will move it, and if it's the will of council to defer it, then that's the will of council. But I would like to speak to it first. So I will move that all funds in the Regional Emissions Reduction Reserve be moved to a new reserve fund for the purpose of supporting projects, plans, and initiatives that reduce the City of Nanaimo's community-wide CO2 emissions to between 50 to 58% below 2010 levels by 2030 and between 94 to 107% below 2010 levels by 2050.
Second.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner.
Thank you. I'll speak to that.
It will be when I put it on.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will speak to that. This was a reserve fund that was set up in collaboration with the 4 member municipalities of the regional district and the regional district. It was meant to be a fund that the member participants in the regional district electoral areas could jointly work on projects. At the time, the RDN had a sustainability manager and a sustainability select committee. Neither of those things really exist at the RDN. The environmental portfolio has been captured into another department, and the Sustainability Select Committee has been terminated. Yet we put money into it in our budget this year and all subsequent years, even though the MOU had expired. So it is money that is being taxed for and unspent. The proposal here is simply to close that reserve fund. I have to reiterate, the MOU that went along with it is expired. Nobody has been acting on this money. It is $600,000. It is a start. It allows us to move ahead with maybe some studies, some plans, revisiting the Sustainability Action Plan, which is the second motion, which is out of date. It allows us to do that without an additional tax requisition. That is the intent of this motion. I provided the MOU. I provided the bylaw. I've given 1 month time. That's plenty of time for individual councillors to have reached out to staff. Whether they did or not, I do not know. But nobody reached out to me on that particular topic. Within the limits of my knowledge, I could have provided on it, or said, you might want to touch base with staff on that particular question. That's 30 days. So if council feels more comfortable with this deferral, then that is the will of council. But I think it's a pretty easy and clean decision to give staff to develop a new reserve fund that maybe we can use as this council to proceed with some initiatives without further taxation.
I generally go by the list that pops up on my little screen here, but in the circumstances, and given what's been said, if Councillor Brown believes it appropriate or thinks it may be appropriate to defer this for 30 days until such time as we can get reports and comments back, I must tell you I am concerned by the remarks that this money is in the fund, but it's a fund that is under control of the city, or is it a fund that's under the control of the regional district? Are they held separately by the city, or how does this work? I guess that's a matter of pretty basic principle to me. Councillor Gesselbrock.
In December, we've been talking about this fund. I'm not sure if my mic's on.
That's okay, my screen's gone again.
No, I'm off. You're on now. We're all on.
Okay. We've been looking at this fund since December when we first started our budget deliberations, and it's been explained to me probably 4 or 5 times. I believe that staff have told us the background on this fund, and it's money that's been sitting there because the structures around it to spend it on emissions reduction strategies have been eroded. And it's very simple that we need to just move it to somewhere that we can use it, and it's an excellent seed funding to begin moving forward with our strategies. So I think it's a pretty straightforward decision, and I don't see any need to further require staff time to look again into this matter. So I support moving this today and getting on with it. Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
I actually have no problem supporting number 1 either. I think if our financial officer says it can be done, I don't have an issue with that, because I think that's what those dollars were collected for, and for them to be sitting there, to me, doesn't make sense. So I definitely support number 1. That's not the one I have issue with. Thank you.
Councillor Turley, I'm going to go by hands, not screen.
So my question is, why do we need to move it?
It's at the regional district.
No.
No? It's a regional emissions reduction.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you.
There's a sustainability.
Reserve funds from our day was that it is just cleaner to establish them for a particular purpose. This one was established with a particular purpose that had an accompanying MOU that has since expired. So this is just simply a way of cleaning that up, so there's really no question at a future time that that money is for these initiatives. So my question to Ms. Mercer on the day of the reserve, when we discussed reserve funds, was around, can you collapse them and move them? And she had indicated at that time that it's good practice to, it's not good practice, it's sort of a requirement that if you move them from one reserve fund, it has to be very similar in nature. So the idea is that they are very similar in nature, it's just unattached from the MOU that went along with the original bylaw.
Just so you all know, you may have been on the list, but you're not on the list now. Who else wishes to speak? Mr.
Worship, again, I'm on the process theme. I see council having two general options here. One is to go forward and deal with each of these issues this evening. The second is to refer each of them to the workshop on the 13th, which is 2 weeks out, at which time staff could furnish additional information in advance of that workshop and build it into the workshop day. And from the GPC committee, you could then come back to the subsequent council meeting with recommendations from GPC. Otherwise, I feel there is a strong resolve and council deal with it tonight, but if you wanted an alternative process, and there may be other recommendations that come out of the workshop for that matter at that day, you do have that option. So just two paths. One is to deal with them tonight. The second would be to move it to that forum, have that less formal, structured conversation around all this and anything else that comes out of that, and then move the recommendations subsequently to the next meeting of council. Just an option for consideration.
Well, the screen's just died again, but it's Councillor Thorpe and then Councillor Brown. Perhaps you could touch your mic and speak up. Thank you.
I don't think the mic is doing anything, but I'll speak up. As I indicated, I did have some qualms about the resolution aspect of this item on our agenda. I actually didn't have many problems with the subsequent four motions because they are more specific and action-driven. However, I must say that this was one that I did wish more background information on. Apparently, Mr. Rudolph is suggesting that might be better served coming at a later date than
well,
right
we
now.
could, we would, through the chair, we could provide you additional, if there are questions and additional information, we'd be prepared to, in a position to provide that for you for the next meeting. We hadn't done that for this evening's meeting, and perhaps that was a shortcoming, but in any event, should you pass it, then we would provide you with a report on the implementation of it. So it's the same thing.
Councillor Armstrong. Don't mind me, I'm just going nuts with technology over here.
My concern is around the bus hours, just because I would like to have dollars when it comes to that. That's my issue. I would like to see us actually move on motion number 4. Writing the letter, because I don't think we require staff to go over that. We're already on motion number 1. No, I'm talking about 4, because we're talking about what we're going to do with the motions. Like, I don't think we need a staff report for number 4. So I would like, I don't think we need to get reports, but I think we need a staff.
The point of order, we do have number 1 on the floor.
We passed it.
Or sorry, number 2 on the floor.
We have passed the first of the 5, which is how we have to treat them. The second one is on the floor. It has not been passed. There has been significant discussion around the possibility of referring all of them to a subsequent meeting. Rather than go back and forth a million times, I suggest that if we wish to do that, then somebody needs to make that motion now and hold. Can we do that, Ms. Gurry, to defer further debate on these motions to that meeting?
So, Your Worship, there is the motion on the floor. If there is a motion to defer all 4 of the motions and it gets seconded, that would be in order. You could do that, and then depending on the vote, you would then defer all of the remaining 4 to the next council meeting.
Rather than go back and forth, have my screen continually die and not be able to figure out who's asking what of whom, Councillor Turley's moved a motion to defer. Is there a seconder? Seconded Councillor Armstrong. Is there any discussion on the motion to defer the remaining 4 motions? Hearing none. All those in favor of deferral?
I got a discussion.
Councillor Gesselbrock.
I think we should go through each motion as we'd started to do and just vote, have a bit of discussion and vote on it, personally. So,
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion to defer? All those in favor of deferring till the May 13th meeting for a report from staff? Contrary? Motion is defeated. We will carry on with the debate. Any further discussion on the first motion? On the second motion?
So we're back on the funds and the regional emissions.
Regional emissions reduction reserve be moved to a new reserve fund. Any
Can I call
discussion
the
on that
question?
motion?
Yes, call the question.
Call the question.
Yes.
Question's been called. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Brown.
Yes, I would move that the framework, strategies, and actions and implementation of the City of Nanaimo Community Sustainability Action Plan be updated to reflect the target goal based on the information contained in the latest Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees.
Seconded by Councillor Hemmens. Councillor Gesselbrock.
I think this is an excellent, actionable step. The Nanaimo Community Sustainability Plan is a great plan, and it needs to be updated, and it sets great goals. And if we can integrate, updated climate action goals based on the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report to limit to 1.5 degrees Celsius, this is an excellent start, and I hope to see that this being a central strategy document that will then be infused into our official community plan. So I think, I strongly support this motion. Thank you.
You've got a new profession, you're a technician.
We're working.
So my comment is that is this able to be spoken about in other words, will the plan be available for our discussion on the economic and the environment and for a more lengthy discussion on doables at that point? At our meeting coming up in...
Yes, Your Worship, we will be revisiting the subject of this plan at that time so that there's a complete presentation and conversation around it.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would actually like to wait on that motion until after we get our information session on it, to see where we're actually at. Thank you.
Councillor Hemmens.
This council just passed a declaration to declare a climate emergency. And I don't know what we're waiting for to update our sustainability action plan. That's going to be our roadmap for how to do that. So I don't see why we need to wait.
Councillor Gesselbrock.
In terms of, I understand that definitely some more discussion around this is needed, as pointed out by Councillor Armstrong. And I think by passing this motion, I think it'll actually give a bit of direction and some framework around the discussion that we're having on May 13th and sort of support that discussion. And so that'll be more effective. So I think that they don't need to be mutually exclusive. And passing this motion and the discussion that happens on May 13th can really go well together. Thank you.
See no further speakers. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carries. Councillor Brown.
Yes, I would move that correspondence be sent to the Regional District of Nanaimo requesting the addition of 20,000 annual public transit hours to improve public transit service delivery within the City of Nanaimo and develop transit routes that connect our local system with interregional connections.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. Councillor Armstrong.
This is the one I have the concerns around. I would like to have a staff report on that as to what the costs would be, how much the city of Nanaimo would be paying, how much the RDN would be paying, where those routes would be, et cetera. Like I think it's really important to get a staff report on the costs because 20,000 hours could be a significant amount of money. And where do those funds come? Does it come from taxation? Does it come from borrowing? So I would really like to have that before I vote on that. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. In response to that, the transit function exists with the regional district in Nanaimo, which is approximately 47% paid by the regional district, the 53% paid by BC Transit. By sending this letter there, that would give us the mechanism to request that information at the regional district level, where the appropriate staff and body would be able to provide us with that information, and then make a decision around whether we make that ask to BC Transit. And with all those considerations around costs, potential routing, at this level, I don't believe we're able to have that conversation because it is the regional district that is responsible for transit delivery within the service in Nanaimo. So this is really to get the ball rolling in that regard, get that information at the regional district level, and then 8 out of our 9 representatives would be there, then be in a position to say, yes, this expansion makes sense, or this expansion request makes sense, we're comfortable with that funding, or alternatively we may not be, and that would be the decision of that board.
Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Worship. I was just going to basically say, not as eloquently though, as Councillor Brown just said about, my understanding is that correspondence would just be sent to the Regional District of Nanaimo, that the City of Nanaimo staff wouldn't have those numbers around the costs, etc., as it's an RDN function.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Having heard Councillor Brown's comments just now, I'm willing to support the sending of the letter as long as people listening and watching recognize that that doesn't mean we're going to get 20,000 extra hours. It depends on the regional district. More importantly, it depends on BC Transit. It depends on the cost factors involved. So this is a first step which I'm prepared to support.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Yes, I will be supporting now based on the conversation. Thank you.
Call question?
All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carried. Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Last and least for this evening, that correspondence be sent to the Honourable George Hyman, Provincial Minister of Environment and Climate Change Strategy, requesting that the province reinstate the production of the Community Energy and Emissions Inventory reports or dedicate grant funding to be used for their creation.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? Councillor Armstrong.
I would like some clarification from, because I'm the first to admit I don't know a lot of this stuff, from Councillor Brown exactly what that would entail. Please. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Sure. I believe these were previously instated by the Liberal provincial government, and it was. I believe they delivered 2 reports. I apologize for not having the total amount, but essentially what they were doing was providing inventories to community data to use for sort of tracking CO2 output from different community metrics. There were some problems and methodological limitations that they were having, and UBCM has supported their reinstatement. The provincial government to this point has not followed through, but it's simply saying, if we want to take this seriously, we need to be able to have some sort of inventory to compare our efforts to. It was a provincial program. It would be lovely if they implemented it again, and this letter is just sort of affirming what has already been sent through the different local government bodies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gurry. Before I go to Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Worship. Just for a point of process, would the letter be sent from you on behalf of Council, the Mayor's office?
That was certainly my presumption, unless someone tells me otherwise.
Thank you.
Councillor Gesselbrock.
I think this is a great motion. Obviously, tackling climate change needs to happen at the municipal level, and it needs to happen at the provincial level, and it needs to happen at the federal level. And when too loud?
World level.
And it needs to happen at the world level, and it starts from the grassroots really speaking up and advocating that if our senior levels of government aren't taking enough responsibility, be it with climate change or housing, we need to speak up and advocate. So this is an excellent first step in that advocacy, so thank you.
All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Folks, I'm going to be the old Grinch. Rules are rules. You wouldn't like it if it was a position that you were opposed to and the others were clapping. So we're going to maintain a little decorum. Councillor Gesselbrock, you can now read your notice of motion, which will go into the record and be available for the meeting.
So, I believe this is actually a motion from...
You have to give a notice of motion.
Sheila, is Ms. Gurry... Yeah, from correspondence, it's a motion.
Yes, so it's going to be just a motion off the floor coming from business arising from this correspondence.
So to participate in the Highlands Council Local Government Climate Survivor, I move that Council accepts the Highlands Council Local Government Climate Survivor Challenge, that each Council member will perform an individual global footprint calculation and allow the CAO to average our individual footprint results, which includes what our annual CO2 emissions are, and send a letter to Highlands Council with these averages to participate in the competition. Each council member will do their best to reduce their emissions over the year to win the competition.
Your Worship, just...
So...
We have a seconder. Councillor Gesselbrock.
To speak to this, it's actually an average that gets sent to Highlands Council. So no individual councillor is singled out, and I'm really looking forward to working as a team to reduce that. And I know that everyone has expressed at this council table a desire to really look at these. So. Councillor Armstrong, you have nothing to worry about.
Councillor Gesselbrock, I must tell you my screen's died again. This doesn't pretend well for your suggestion. Councillor.
Having gone through this process when it first came up, I think it's a great plan that we have here. It actually shows what we're all willing to do, walk the talk, that sort of thing. If we look at this as a lifeboat, though, I would like to see that Councillor Armstrong was first one off.
I disagree. We need her.
Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Worship. I'm sure it's probably outlined in the letter or the challenge, but Mr. Rudolph, as the CAO, he's going to have some guidelines and tools on how to measure council success, etc., or is he going to get some help with that?
Anybody want a card? It's actually on the...
Councillor Gesselbrock.
I can speak to that. It's very simple. It's a 10-minute survey, and then just the results get sent. I mean, it doesn't have to be to Mr. Rudolph, but to somebody. An average is made, and then we just send that. I can do the average. I'm good with math. And that gets sent to the Council Highlands, and they take care of everything. So it'll be under probably a 15-minute commitment.
You'll help me.
Councillor Turley.
So, Your Worship, does this mean I can retroactively use my repurposing of all my election signage? And yeah.
That's a very good question, Councillor Turley. I suspect not, because this will be from the state moving forward, but it's a very positive suggestion. Councillor Armstrong, you have something to say?
No, we're a team.
No, I don't council because I have the biggest
Will
carbon
somebody
imprint.
please call the question and put the mayor out of his misery?
I will win.
Question? All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Question period.
I'll be walking.
Do we have any questions? No? Excellent. A motion for adjournment. Moved, Councillor Bonner, seconded Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Contrary, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Are you tired of dragging the garbage out? They just don't make them like they used to. It's a saying that doesn't really apply to garbage cans. Yes, young man, you seem ready for a new garbage and recycling experience. Take a look at the new green, blue, and black carts right behind you. Yes, exactly. Oh, I see your confusion. I can fix it. Go ahead, give them a try. Pretty easy to roll, right? Did you know that a set of these carts will be delivered to every house in Nanaimo as a part of the new Sort, Toss, Roll program? It's designed to make it easy for you to sort your waste, toss it into the correct cart, and roll it to the curb.
3 carts will be assigned to your home, but the city actually owns them. This way, the city will maintain responsibility for repairing and replacing the carts when it's needed.
Wow, you really are happy about this. There are a few things you need to know before you start wheeling your carts to the curb. Are you ready? Great, let's get ready to sort, toss, roll.
Yeah!
Did you think that this was a silent video? Well, now that you've found your voice, why don't you narrate this next bit?
The new Sort, Toss, Roll automated curbside collection program is coming to Nanaimo in 2 phases. Phase 1 is being rolled out to central Nanaimo now. Sort, Toss, Roll will come to the rest of Nanaimo in the summer of 2018. Carts will be delivered and placed at the end of your driveway, yard, or curbside. This is how you should place your carts on collection days. An information package will be left for you, further introducing you to the new program, with information spanning from instructions on how to place your cart on different types of streets to options for cart upsizing, or details on what goes into each cart.